So I don't know. I don't know if we're doing themes or not. I'm going to start out with food poems because it's the dinner hour. And I'm originally from Virginia, but I live in Massachusetts now. And so whenever I write about food, it reminds me of home. How to make a crab cake. Start with your own body. The small bones of the hands moving towards the inlets of the fingers. Wanting it too much invites haste. You must love what is raw and hungered for. Think of the crab cake as the ending, as you till away at the meat, digging for errant shells and jagged edges. Always it's a matter of guesswork, but you hold it together by the simplest of ingredients, for this is how the body learns to be generous, to forgive the flaws inherited, and enjoy what lies ahead. Yet you never quite know when it happens, the moment when the lumps transcend egg and breadcrumbs, the quiver of oil in a hot pan to become unworldly, the manifold of pleasure, with the sweet ache of crab still bright on your tongue. I make pretty good crab cakes. All right, so how many of you are familiar with okra, the vegetable? Great, not to be confused with Oprah. This is okra, which is a thicken, which is a great vegetable that can be used as a thickener. So in gumbos and such. So in praise of okra. No one believes in you like I do. I sit you down on the table and they overlook you for fried chicken and grits, crab cakes and hush puppies, black-eyed peas and succotash and sweet potatoes and watermelon. Your stringy, slippery texture reminds them of the creatures from the movie Aliens. But I tell my friends, if they don't like you, they are cheating themselves. You were brought from Africa as seeds, hidden in the ears and hair of slaves. Nothing was wasted in our kitchens. We took the unused and the throwaways and made feasts. We taught our children how to survive, adapt. So I write this poem in praise of okra and the cooks who understood how to make something out of nothing. Your fibrous skin melts in my mouth, green flecks of flavor, still tough, unbruised, part of the fabric of earth, soul food.
Thank you all. Thank you, Susan, Harold, and Katie, for having me here. And I'm so thrilled to be reading with January. And I love the way this reading is set up because there's kind of a little, you got to be on your edge and paying attention to what the other reader is reading, because what I read is kind of determined by what she read. So she mentioned okra and Oprah. And as she said that, I realized I actually have Oprah mentioned in one of my poems. So that's what we're going to start with tonight. And there's really not a lot to know about this poem. It's just kind of a meditation. And that's what it's called, Rooftop Meditations. You can hear me okay? All right. Rooftop Meditations. I believe I could kneel in so many quiet places. Nancy Pegg, from her poem, I Believe I Could Kneel. Years ago, or yesterday, I ran into the holy forest or into Oprah's studio audience in hopes of finding peace or keys to a new car. What I found was an alphabet, a painting that read, "Dead Man." There was a letter I wrote that said, "Sometimes I feel so disconnected." A message from a friend, "Relax." How I had hoped for a new car, a life with good mileage. Years ago or last night, I started a load of wash and forgot faith could bleed into my white sweater. Or maybe it was the red towel mixed in with everything I love, cashmere, khakis, God, her white Marilyn Monroe dress blowing over her head from an earthly draft below. "This is my dilemma," I said to a friend. "How can I know God if there's no God?" She said, "Faith sticks to the roof of my house, has its own ringtone." Years ago, or this morning, I was scraping moss off the roof and meditating on these words, "Call me, calm me." I was waiting for the hospital bill, for the car accident to happen, for 1,000 things that could go wrong. This was when the phone rang, when I heard church bells through the fog banks. Sometimes I feel so disconnected. My caller ID blinking, unknown, unknown. How many years have I waited for my aha moment? "Hello?" I said to my imagined tragedies. Then a click, and there was nothing. How quiet God was when she finally phoned. Thank you. And what's fun is I never read this poem out anywhere. So, as I said, you guys are also very lucky to be here in January, because this really is her only one reading here. And she has her new great book out, Misery Islands, which I've fallen in love with. But I want to respond to her poem about food. And also, since you guys will be doing just a little writing exercises, and don't get nervous because no one's going to make you stand up and read anything, because we don't force people to read poetry. This poem was inspired by walking through my house, and my husband was watching Rachel Ray when she was, I don't know if she's still on TV, but she was on the Food Network, and she made a comment about the spice cumin. And I thought it was really interesting, so I wrote it down, and it ended up in a poem. So sometimes that happens. And it's called Preparing Lucky Pea Soup in the New Year. She dices peppers, 40 degrees and falling. Last night, her birthday, and the woman she was raised her pen to the moon, crossed out another year, wrote loss. She sees her body in the curve of letters, not in the words. She sees the letters she never wrote in the chili powder. She places bacon in the skillet, and the pop of grease surprises her, a celebration of heat. She cannot tell you why she cried in the spice aisle of the grocery store, why she turned away when a friend she saw asked how she was. It's easier to suffer alone, with a cold night and diced tomatoes. It's easy to suffer when the moon is your best lighting, when fine lines appear near an open window. She cannot imagine her life without black-eyed peas, without someone to share them with. She knows her husband will return soon. She knows she cannot push away what's already lost. She adds a dash of cumin because it keeps the chickens and lovers from straying. All this she stirs. Thank you.
Kelly's right. When you get up here and you hear what the person before you reads, I mean, you really don't know what you're going to read. And then, you get to read things that you don't normally. So in response to the food poem, so I'm going to read, this seems appropriate for a coffee shop. In the company of women. Make me laugh over coffee. Make it a double. Make it frothy so it seethes in our delight. Make my cup overflow with your small happiness. I want to hoot and snort and cackle and chuckle. Let your laughter fill me like a bell. Let me listen to your ringing and singing as Billie Holiday croons above our heads. Sorry, the blues are nowhere to be found. Not tonight, not here. No makeup, no tears. Only contours, only curves. Each sip takes back a pound. Each dry roasted swirl takes our soul. Can I have a refill? Just one more? Let the bitterness sink to the bottom of our lives. Let us take this joy to go. And so in Kelli's first poem, she mentioned laundry. So I have a poem about laundry. It's a poem called Denim, and in it I mention my age is 42. I am no longer 42. It's been a little uptick. Denim. Alone in the basement, I take off my pajama bottoms and slide warm denim from the dryer over my thighs. They unfurl like a blue flag, tighter than I remember, hanging lower and snugger around my hips than before. This is how 42 feels. Authentic, comfortable, dangerously curvy, a little distressed along the pockets. I run my hands over the weft and weave, smooth the creases over the inseam, that junction between the invisible and visible at the intersection of the crotch. The long cursive of my legs is my signature. Blessed be the soap and hard water that makes it all come clean. Like fallen halos, white rings of snow salt, once around my cuffs, tumbled away in turbulence, my past sins absolved. Everything smells April fresh, of mountain breezes and waterfalls. My body retrofits to these grooves and furrows in the selvage that never fades.
So January mentioned both blue denim and blues. So this poem has got blues in it. And it's a poem where I kind of imagined this idea of traveling through life with the motto, be helpful or be useful. And it's called Portrait of the Artist as a Young Traveler. Because I love the less fortunate, blues fill my luggage like the blouse I left on the bedroom floor. I forget what's needed. The sound of a suitcase zipping around absent-mindedness. The challenge of life is making everything fit. For everyone who never smiled in school photos, for all who've wandered city streets not knowing where they were or feeling alone, I've packed kindness. My suitcase spills over with constricting bras, but they're coming with me. Like angels incorrectly measured for wings, our shoulders ache from all we carry. The ticket's been purchased, though the destination is heartache. Purgatory opens, and a tavern full of saxophonists tries to lure us in. Voodoo books, strawberry ale, Dixieland jazz. The foam in the glass spills over into my hand. And in the back, a dartboard with someone's beating heart as the bullseye. The matadors retreat as I arrive and quickly remove their spears. So it's tax night, so I wanted to read a money poem, and I realized I don't write a lot of money poems, so I have a MacBook, and you can search for words, and so I searched for taxes, and I found a poem, and then I found this poem, and I wrote it in 1999, and it was kind of when I was moving from Seattle to Kingston, and Microsoft was really big, and I felt like we would never, ever, ever have enough money. And so the title of this poem is called, How Can We Be Happy If We Don't Own Microsoft Stock? Which was a thing at a time. Now it's probably Apple but there was a time when you wanted Microsoft stock, 1999. I even have my old email address on this. How can we be happy if we don't own Microsoft stock? Yesterday, a bald eagle soared above the evergreens. Its wingspan reached across the continent, touched Wall Street, and returned. In the garden, sweet peas began to rise. 2 sparrows visited, invested in our birdhouse, and planned for an early retirement when sunflowers turned from green to gold. The garden gates were open, and from the windows, I watched explorers wandered in. Deer nibbled on the leaves of apple trees as a mouse rushed by our basement window. I put our money in mason jars, buried them between lavender and sage. Let the earth hold our assets. Let forget-me-nots bloom on the lapels of brokers, their fingernails clean from fresh, hot soil.
All right, so on the theme of taxes and work and money, so I'm going to read 2 about my old, when I worked at, I used to work at Babson College in the on the administrative side. I didn't teach at the time, so. So this one is about my boss who was just fired. You know how people just, companies just change over and all of a sudden somebody's there and somebody's not. So it was, you know, so it was tough. You are not your salary, but you are the pens, the paper, the report due yesterday with its charts and figures. You're the tilting desk that no one, not even you, bothers to fix. Take a swig of burnt coffee and get to it. You fix things, you buy things, you're a connector, a decider. You find mistakes in statements buried in the coal mines of words. You are also the banter, the fodder, the guffaw in the corner office, the high five and the backslap. You're the secret knowledge that you're the only one here who has a clue. How quickly the hours move as you buy time. You're a wealth of information in an economy of scale. Like the clock on the wall, you make things tick. Nevertheless, you are not your salary. How could you be? You are the window overlooking the golf course and the Q-tipped golfers hitting balls into oblivion. And so in one of Kelli's, maybe the last one, she mentioned a bird of prey, I think. Yeah, okay. So this is an example of a poem that I did not actually witness, but my coworker did, and it was such a traumatic story. It ended up as a poem. The Hawk and the Hare. When the world you know shuts down for the day, turns off its halogen lights, uncrumples itself from the mist foul shots around the recycling bin, you cape your jacket around your neck and leave the office, only to be startled by a red-tailed hawk a few feet away, light brown feathers streaked in white. He stands on the newly sodden lawn, magnificent, suspicious, wings tucked in, yet does not let go of what's between his talons, a chipmunk, no, a squirrel, no, a hare, that same small creature you saw at lunchtime, with its soft, floppy ears scampering along the building wall, obscured by the big-headed hydrangeas. He buries its beak into the body, ripping brown fur and skin in large, bloody chunks. He must have plotted this destruction all day and will not be denied by you or your presence. No sound but the sound of struggle, while your heart pounds inside your body. You think for a moment you should do something, call someone, stop this, but you don't. You keep this carnage to yourself, the hawk now grasping it tightly but inching away from you. You're not even sure if the hare is still alive, but for the twitching of its foot, rhythmic as a drum until it ceases. Before you know it, the hawk takes off, clasping what's left of its meal, giving a shrill cry as he soars above the pines and disappears. For days, tufts of hair and bone dot the grass, untouched like a makeshift memorial, as if you could claim this handiwork as your own. And you, the whole time, are left thinking about this savage life, how it takes from the body and never gives back, how it pulls you apart each day and goes on without apology or warning or end.
Okay. So I'm going to read one poem instead of two poems, which we've been doing, and then we'll finish up with a final poem. Does that sound good for time? That was a fantastic poem. And it's interesting because that's like one of my phobias, and I love spring, but I hate spring because I feel like it just becomes this time when I have to stress over small animals that I have no control over, like ducks with their ducklings or the baby cows or all these little birds and things falling. And I live in Kingston, and so it's really rural, and it just stresses me out. So this is a poem about my phobias. And that idea of it's the part of life that I hate, that we're all temporary, and I don't like it. So, but our art isn't. So this is called Waltz with Artistic Immortality. And what I love about this poem was I didn't know I had it, but Susan said, oh, our theme is death and taxes, and I did another search and found this poem because it includes the words taxes. It also has coffee. And it starts with a quote. The idea is not to live forever. It is to create something that will. And it's by Andy Warhol. Throughout my hazy halftime of a life, I've preferred phobias over faux fur, over foam swords. And I say halftime as if I know the final score. As if living into my 90s is a done deal, a destination I'm traveling to, like Canada. Only 45-minute drive, and I'm at the border telling the guard I have no fresh fruit, just as I bite into an apple. This is the crossing of the common sense, of your eyes not believing what your ears are hearing, like my halftime life, body no longer smooth, and all these new freckles. How I hate the teenager who wore my body and insisted on tanning beds before school dances. But we're all growing older. Each year, another teacher, friend, father, mother disappears. No wonder I'm always leaning into the void of self, where no one leaves, because when I do, I'll take this mind that worries, that hates the pain of loving people, then losing them to arteries bursting, to cancer, to laying down for a nap and not waking up. Maybe one day I will slip into fleece sheets and disappear, but I shouldn't say maybe. But this is my humanness pretending that the parking space matters, that we should all be enraged at the price of gas, of taxes, of a cup of coffee, when I know none of it matters. Like the years I spent in the tanning bed, I was happy and naive, naked and believing in excess time. My body glowed so when I put on my champagne pink taffeta gown, I would glimmer too. Like the cutout silver moon and the imperfect glitter stars hanging above us. Even now, if we look up to wish on 1 or 10 of them, before we disappear into that same universe, if we could just settle down and relax, take a few moments to write something, and maybe it could simmer in the darkness. And in a future, someone will look up and think they see our name sewn between the constellations.
Okay. Okay. I don't know what to read next.
What my children will tell about me.
All right, I'll read that one. Do you want me to close with that, or do you want me to?
Close with it.
All right. Okay, so I'll read one more. And then if you want to read one, or not, I'm not sure. Okay. All right. So it was my greatest fear in life. So I have 2 kids, and now I'm a single mom. So, you know, you don't always get it right. It's true for any parent, but with the single parent, you know, you're sort of the only one in the house. So you are the good parent and bad parent. Good cop, bad cop, right? What my kids will write about me in their future tell-all book. They will say that no was my favorite word more than stop or eat or love. That some mornings I'd rather stay in bed, laptop on lap, instead of making breakfast. That I'd rather write than speak. They will say they have seen me naked, front side, back side, none of which were my good side. They will say I breastfed too long. In the tell-all book my kids will write, they'll tell how I let them wrinkle like raisins in the bathtub so I could watch Big Papi at the plate. That's Big Papi from the Boston Red Sox. They'll talk about how I threw out their artwork, the watercolors and the turkey hands, when I thought they weren't looking and when I knew they were. They'll say that my voice was a slow torture, that my singing caused them permanent hearing loss. In the tell-all book my kids will write, as surely as I am writing this, they will say I cut them off mid-sentence just because I could. They'll tell you how I got down on my knees, growling my low, guttural disapproval, how I grabbed their ears, pinched the backs of their arms, yet never quite knew who was sadder for it. They'll quote me in saying, I cry in the shower, it's the only safe place I can go. They will say she was our sweetest disaster. They will say I love them so much it hurt. Woo!
I love that poem. I think anyone that, gosh, has been a parent, you can totally relate to that. So I'm going to end with a poem that I like to end with, and it's the idea of being vulnerable in the world. And I think when we do something like this, it's very vulnerable. And January reading that poem and just interacting in a way that's surprising. So it's called Self-Portrait with Reader, and it's just about the art and risking things in your life. Sometimes emotional risk is harder than physical. Self-Portrait with Reader. To create is not enough. We must live with our hearts in our hands like Mary. We must hold the blood-red heart and not be disappointed when others look away. This is the simplest way to say yes, to say, I am here giving you what I'm afraid will scare you, yet I am holding it in my palms. Disappear if you have to. Disappear into the cracks of the world and call it an earthquake. Fear shakes itself on us, and we decide how much we can take. Reader, I want to tell you, the hearts we hold will continue beating even after we leave here. Be the statue on the dashboard, traveling hopefully. Even if what you hold drips onto the floorboard. Even if you have no idea where to go. Thank you.
Our favorite poem presenter tonight is Paul Nojaim. Paul is the founder and the main man of West Seattle Acupuncture. I can personally attest to Paul's kindness, his intelligence, his emotional intelligence, and his incredibly wonderful way with needles. You can't say that about too many people. I've known Paul for about a decade, and it's a great honor to welcome him to the stage with his favorite poem. Come on up, Paul.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for taking some time out to listen to this poem here. I chose this poem, first of all, I was so happy that you guys called me up and asked me to do this, and this poem just shot to my mind. And then I started really trying to think about it and maybe overanalyzing it, but this thing kept coming back, kept coming back. So I have to do this because about 20 years ago, this is the poem at the end of the movie Smoke Signals. and it just like floored me when I heard it. It's basically about how do we forgive our fathers, and that was something that I'd been struggling with for decades. And this poem was just like the little kick to just kind of like move me through somewhere where I'd been stuck, and just kind of find resolve or more transcendence over like that whole situation. So, without me babbling on any further, this poem's called "How Do We Forgive Our Fathers" by Dick Lourie. Okay. How do we forgive our fathers? Maybe in a dream. Do we forgive our fathers for leaving us too often or forever when we were little? Maybe for scaring us with unexpected rage or making us nervous because there never seemed to be any rage at all? Do we forgive our fathers for marrying or not marrying our mothers? For divorcing or not divorcing our mothers? And shall we forgive them for their excesses of warmth or coldness? Shall we forgive them for pushing or leaning, for shutting doors, for speaking through walls, or never speaking, or never being silent? Do we forgive our fathers in our age, or in theirs, or in their deaths, saying it to them, or not saying it? If we forgive our fathers, what is left? Thank you.